Good morning and a huge welcome to all of those joining us for the third webinar of the Maiden Voyage, Your Best Travel Self webinar series. This particular one is called Dealing with Travel Related Stress and is brought to you in partnership with the amazing Dr Lucy Rattrie, founder of Creating Sona. Today's webinar is kindly sponsored by EasyJet. So a little introduction to Maiden Voyage for you, for those of you that don't know us. We're about making travel safe and social for female business travellers. Statistics show that 1 in 4 women have experienced some form of harassment whilst travelling on business, and as much as 79% so that they wouldn't know what to do should something happen to them. We help businesses fulfil their duty of care to their travellers, and we educate the travellers on the possible risks to help mitigate them. After all, you don't know what you don't know. And we do this through our female traveller safety training, which is via classroom and e-learning. We have corporate membership options. We do hotel inspections, whereby we provide those who have passed to our corporate partners for the hotels. And of course, we do our travel wellbeing webinars, which are generic to both male and female business travellers. Webinars that have already taken place this year have been travel wellbeing and navigating interest is on dealing with travel related stress, and there'll be a further webinar delivered in December on beating. These webinars have been developed based on feedback from our Maiden Voyage community on areas you need support in, and will be on, and we're looking forward to the 2019 webinar series at the moment. When I send a follow-up email following on from today, please do have a think about what subjects that would benefit you and email me in response to my email that I'll send you later. But for today's webinar, we're focusing on dealing with travel-related stress. My name is Erica and I'm the Operations Manager here at Maiden Voyage. Please can I just make sure that you're giving yourself a quiet area and give this time to yourself. As we all know, and I'm sure we can relate to, that stress can manifest itself in many different ways and can certainly be exacerbated by travel. I'm very much looking forward to hearing what Lucy has to say and learning some practical tips and advice to put into practice going forward. My role today is very simple, and that is to facilitate this webinar for you. And I've got my fingers crossed that technology is on our side today. It's always the one thing that concerns me. So let's do a quick poll to make sure that we're working. So just bear with me one moment to make sure we're all awake this morning. So the first one is, do you find travelling for business stressful? So just bear with me one moment. I'm going to launch that poll for you. Okay, if you don't mind taking a minute to vote for that. So that could be anything, and Lucy's going to cover that. It could be things like, are the flights delayed? Are they overcrowded? Have you been delayed in even getting to the airport? Have they not got food that you like? All various things. So I'm going to close that poll now and share those results. Okay, so we've got 71% of you have said yes, and that's hardly surprising. Whether or not it's for business or leisure, typically there's always something along the way that can stress us out. I'm going to ask you one more. So the next one that I've got for you is, if you've answered yes, bear in mind we're talking about business related, travel related stress here. Have you raised it with your employer? So only if you've answered yes to respond to this one. Take a second to do that. Okay, it's coming in. Give it a couple more seconds. All right, we'll close that and we'll share those results. Okay, so just 33% of those answered yes have raised it with their employer, and 67% said no. So it's quite interesting, Lucy, for you to come on to later. Okay, so we know technology is working. Fantastic. Let's do a bit of housekeeping before I introduce you to Lucy. So this webinar is going to last about an hour and is being recorded. A copy of this recording will be sent to you following the session and will be available for you for a limited amount of time. If I could just point out that these slides are copyright of Maiden Voyage and/or Creating Sona. And there'll be a couple more polls released throughout this session just to gain a bit of insight into you as business travellers of today. Everyone's different, we recognise that, and of course have had different experiences. And therefore, if you want to ask a specific question, please do so, and we'll come to those towards the end. You'll see in your box that you'll have a questions box, so you can just put your question in there. If you'd like it to be anonymous, just please write private at the beginning of your question, and we'll come to those towards the end. Please do allow yourself this hour to invest in you in the quest to become your best travel self. It's only an hour out of your day. And of course, we hope that you get some practical tips that you're going to put into practice to make you even more effective going forward. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Lucy to educate and help you over this next 45 minutes or so. So Lucy, I'm going to hand over the controls over to you.
Thank you very much, Erica.
Okay, over to you.
Thank you, Erica. I appreciate that very much.
Right, have you got control?
Yes, I believe I do. I'm waiting for it to click through. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Erica, apologies, but I don't seem to have control.
That's okay. Try it again now, Lucy. There we go.
There we go. Perfect. Well, yes, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Erica. It's absolutely delightful to have you all here today, and a real honour and pleasure. You can see here a little bit of background just to set the scene. I'm a chartered psychologist with some expertise and a PhD in managing well-being for business travellers. I tend to work with people doing one-to-one coaching and working with organisations running workshops or helping as a consultant on a more strategic level. I'm not all about the sort of academic side of things though, so here are a few little facts about myself that you may not have guessed. One is that I compete in Ironman triathlon. Two is that I'm an occasional BBC TV presenter on outdoor adventure sports. And the third one is that a current passion of mine is in medicinal nutrition. So that's what I'm reading from my bedtime books at the moment. Here is an overview of what we're going to cover during the webinar today. As you can see, the main purpose is really to share a lot of top tips with you, give you guidance and suggested actions so you have the tools to manage your own stress and take control over your own well-being. One of the key things I really want you to walk away from today with is a bit of a starter personal stress management plan. Those 4 steps that we'll work through together will help you do that and kickstart that process for you. So there will be a template there that you can use, and you can take all the different strategies and techniques to take this away with you and start practicing them in your day-to-day living more as habits and rituals, and taking the required small steps to improving your own stress and managing your own well-being. I really want you to get the most from today though, and the way to do that is to be very open and very engaged and actively work through the exercises and apply the tips. First of all, I thought it would be great to relax everybody so you can start the webinar and start the session feeling quite chilled out, I guess. I'm going to take you through a relaxation technique that is perfect for traveling. So once practiced and you're a bit more familiar with it, give it 2 or 3 times. This can be a really, really good distraction. You can use it anywhere in the moment. And although I'll ask you to have your eyes closed today, if you can, in time, you can have the same benefits doing this with your eyes open, so you can do it in public. So let's get started on that. I would like everybody, and if this feels a bit strange, just try it and go with it and trust in the process. I would like everybody to sit comfortably, backs resting against a chair and both feet on floor with hands in your lap, just gently resting there. If you can, close your eyes and on my count, breathe in through the nose slowly for 1, 2, 3, and out slowly for 1, 2, 3. Now keep breathing very slowly to that rhythm. Now, with your eyes closed, picture a place that you find really pleasant and calming. A place you feel safe, loved, and warm, that brings a smile to your face. Take a deep breath again on my count through the nose for 1, 2, 3, and out for 1, 2, 3. Keeping that breathing and your eyes closed, I would like you to focus on one colour in that special pleasant place. Focus on how vibrant the colour is, how bright it is. Now listen to the sounds around you. Take a mental note of what you are hearing. And imagine touching something there and smelling the air. Just let that rest with you for a second. And feel the calmness. Now, breathe slowly in through the nose again for 1, 2, 3, and out through the mouth for 1, 2, 3. Imagining yourself calm and peaceful in this place, focus on relaxing the muscles in your forehead one by one, working down towards your eyebrows. If there is a frown, smooth it. Relax the eyes under your lids. Relax the cheeks and soften the mouth. Breathe slowly in again for 1, 2, 3, and out for 1, 2, 3. Now open your eyes and let's begin your stress management plan. I hope that's relaxed everybody. This diagram here is an overview of stress, and the definition at the top is particularly relevant. Everyone has their own understanding and their own experience of stress. It's a combination essentially of external pressures plus the expectations you place on yourself and your belief in your own ability to cope. Together, these influence your perception of a situation and whether you might react or respond. So that's whether you're calm or you're stressed in how that manifests. It's important to note as well that pressure and stress are really different. Pressure is good, it's positive, and it's motivating. We need pressure to keep us going and to achieve our dreams. Stress, however, is pressure amplified to the max. Stress, therefore, comes down to a few key things, and I would like you to really take note of these because these are all things that you can actually control. Our self-awareness, our perceptions, our internal beliefs, and our strategies for coping. We're going to try and work on all of those 4 things today. So the good news is that you can actually do something about it. Here is a list of potential causes of stress. You'll see that stress emerges from either triggers, which tend to be quite instant, unexpected, things we're unprepared for, such as a cancelled flight or terrible food somewhere, but they can also be very chronic and build over time. So to bring this to life, this lady standing here at the airport is Diana. So she is a stressed business traveller taking an overnight flight from Geneva to New York to give a presentation to a potential client straight from the flight. So potentially stressful situation going on there. She's experiencing various chronic drivers, including a lot of unhelpful thinking. For example, they're going to think I'm rubbish, or unhelpful habits such as comfort eating and drinking on the flight, despite that she knows that she's going to feel terrible at the end of it. So this means that when she arrives, she struggles to connect with the client and she just doesn't quite feel her best self or feel on top form. What we're going to work through today is how, for example, Diana could take a more helpful perspective and think, this is going to be great, this is an amazing opportunity. And if she thinks like that and engages in better behaviours, more helpful behaviours, she'll manage her instant triggers and her chronic drivers a lot better and have a much better outcome. Stress, it affects us all. There's absolutely no denying that. But like I said before, the good news is that you can do something about it. So 1 in 4 people experience a mental health problem in any year, which is huge, yet it's not something that's talked about as much as it should be. In particular, I interviewed and surveyed business travelers from around the world, and my research showed that about 90% of you experience stress as a result of the trip, either before, during, or after, and this can have really serious consequences. The research showed that business travelers have higher stress levels due to the added number of anxiety-inducing situations. So there are lots of unforeseen circumstances, there are logistical nightmares, jet lag, sleep problems, unhealthy food, difficulty exercising, feeling isolated away from family, dealing with cultural issues. So you've got all your standard day-to-day and work pressures, but then you add in all these extra things, which puts a completely different dimension onto your own experience of life and work. So therefore, it's easy to see how stress levels are so much higher. The good news, though, is that this research really pinpoints what business travelers specifically can do to manage stress. So it showed a number of things. Intensity of travel was a key source of stress, and we're looking at the frequency that people travel, the duration of the travel, and the quality of the travel. So there are factors that, for example, your organization can help with. How somebody thinks and how somebody behaves and the choices they make around that were also very, very important. And key things emerged here. For example, if a business traveler is what we would term as psychologists, cognitively flexible or psychologically flexible and adaptable, and they have self-belief and self-efficacy, then that is a really, really, really good mental strength that they can take forwards to help them manage stress. Now that is also very relevant for everyone around us. But what came out was for business travelers, that was one of the key things to focus on. And it can be developed in people, which is great, through a bit of brain training and some techniques and strategies to help people cope. Other behavioural choices and elements were proven to be very important as well. The key thing was proper recovery. So you all know how important that is. It's to do with sleep, it's to do with switching off. And if we don't have that, we can, well, end up in a really bad way. And there are some key things within recovering properly, such as switching off mentally, proper relaxation, and being able to experience or master something new. So those are the key things to focus on as business travelers in terms of managing your stress. And these are things that might differ to people back in the office at home. Okay, so they will have different priorities because it's all relevant, but it's what do you focus on first. Talking to your employer about these unique wellbeing needs is really important. And I thought it was very interesting that 67% of you have not raised these sorts of issues with your employer. But those key things that I mentioned a moment ago would be really important to highlight to them as things that you might need for you to be able to do a good job and for you to feel as if you're totally on form. Your employer has, as we all know, a legal responsibility and a duty of care around your health and your safety and your well-being. And most employers are very keen to help. They simply need a bit of prompting or a bit of guidance on how that can actually go ahead and progress ahead. Erica, could you please release this poll?
Yeah, sure I can.
Thank you.
Bear with me 1 minute while I do that.
So now we have a good understanding of what stress is and how it shows to the world. take a moment to think how often you feel under pressure. So you might have, for example, always, you're constantly wired and on the go, or it's just about manageable, or it can get on top of you, or you only get stressed if it's something really important.
Okay,
And never,
so coming in now.
and never if you feel very, very chilled out. And if you answer 5, that's somebody that I would like to hear from, because you've obviously got the stress management absolutely nailed. So that would be fantastic to hear what you're doing and what's working for you.
Okay, I'm going to close the vote now for you, Lucy. So just bear with me 1 second. And I'll share that response with you. So you should be able to see that on your screen, Lucy.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess the majority, in fact, almost all of you have mentioned that it can get on top of you, but that tends to be only if it's something really important. So you're talking a few times a week or a few times a month. Some of you, so 14% of you, are every day, always, and I guess that's something that really needs to be taken, needs to be given some thought. But certainly, all of you that have responded are experiencing stress to some degree. And we're not talking pressure, we're talking stress. So hopefully the tips and the techniques that we work through today will help you to manage that.
Okay, so that should have just closed off the screen for you, Lucy, and that's gone back over to you.
Thanks, Erica. Apologies, everybody, 1 second. It's taking a second for the controls to come back. There we go. Perfect. So these are the areas to focus on in your personal well-being plan. These concepts represent 4 areas to achieving great well-being. First of all, we've got happy minds, and we all know how important having a happy, positive mind is. This is all about thinking well, okay? Your emotions, having positive emotions, being mentally resilient, being quite youthful and playful in your mindset, having good, strong mental health, and generally being positive. So these are to do with your thoughts, your beliefs, and your emotions, that mental strength and happy mind. The second stage in this process is around feeling good physically. So that's around having a healthy body. So it's the physical energy you actually have, your sleep patterns, how you nourish the body. So that's food, alcohol, how you move. Are you getting enough exercise? Do you have aches and pains? And also physiological responses. So that could be anything from heart or lung issues and chronic illnesses, right through to hormonal regulations. And they're really, really important, because if your cortisol, for example, isn't regulated properly and all your other hormones are out of balance, no matter what you do in terms of the strategies you apply, if those hormones aren't in balance, it's going to be just bang your head off a wall with actually not making any progress. The third stage in this is around having energized connections. So this is about behaving positively, having good connections with people around you, socializing, relationships, nature, the environment, the community. That's feeling part of something bigger and connecting with the world around us. And then the last phase is around having a positive life. So this is living well and working well. That's thriving, having good work-life balance, being financially secure, and accomplishing your dreams. So now I know that obviously we're dealing with stress, and most people assume that stress is all to do with the mind, and it is to do with the mind. The mind has the most powerful part to play in controlling our stress. But what I would like to highlight here is that whilst, yes, to manage stress, we'll focus on having a happy mind, these other things are all important. If we have them all in harmony, then we've got potential to really be our best selves. So this is really the steps to creating your own stress management plan. You can see here there are 4, and I'll work through each of them independently with some techniques thrown in there as well. The first one is around assessing your well-being. It's really, really, really important to do this, first of all, before you start engaging in any sort of structured approach to stress management. Because if we don't know where we currently are with our stress and well-being, we don't know how to get to where we want to be. So it's really good to identify what's working, what's not, and where to focus. Ordinarily, I guess a well-being assessment is quite in-depth across these 4 areas. But for the purposes of today, I've given you 3 questions to think about in relation to, let's focus on happy minds. So think about these 3 questions and we'll come back to them later. So if you were to get help in any way across these areas, what would you ask for right now? And go with your gut instinct. So there will be something prominent at the forefront of your mind that just comes out there and jumps out of you. And that, whether it's, I think negatively, I get anxious about these types of situations, I don't feel good in my body, I don't feel like I'm connecting well with people, I don't feel like I'm performing well at work, whatever it is, something will come up for you. If you wrote a letter to yourself today about your well-being to read in 5 years, what would it say? So this is the vision that you have for yourself in 5 years. And number 3, what would a better version of you look like? So if you had a fully happy mind, a healthy body, energized connections, and a positive spirit, what would that look like to you? So these are some key questions just to give you a bit of an overview around assessing your own well-being. So the second step is around profiling your drivers. So this is really about building a picture of what's causing us stress. So our triggers and our causes and our drivers. A profile is essentially, it's a deep dive into how you think, feel, behave, live, and work to assess what's going on and how to improve. We learn about our triggers and causes, and this gives us self-awareness, which allows us to become our own experts. And that's the best thing, because you then don't have to rely or be dependent on anyone else for your own well-being, because it's all in your hands and you know what to do about it. So listed here are the 4 areas with some examples of things that you can focus on depending on your particular area of well-being that needs to be worked at, and also depending on your personal drivers. So if you want to profile these drivers after the webinar, you can send me an email and I'll provide some questions for you to ask yourself. For example, one of those could be around identifying any beliefs that you have that you're potentially unaware of that could be causing you stress. This is called a stress-inducing beliefs indicator. And the reason why something like that is really important is because those beliefs could be out with our frame of reference and our awareness, but they're causing us constant unnecessary stress. It could also be around identifying any negative thinking and then how to change that negative and helpful thinking into more positive thinking. So take a moment to look at that, and if you want any more information, then you can email me afterwards and I can explain it in more depth and send you some information so you can assess all of these yourself to get a bit more to grips with it. Going back to Diana, so this was the lady that we saw in the previous image. Here are some of her responses in terms to some questions that were asked around an unhelpful underlying belief that she had that related to her perception of the control, of the amount of control. So us psychologists will call this locus of control. A person with an internal locus of control might think, what can I do about this? A person with an external locus of control might think, there's absolutely nothing I can do about this. So you can see the difference there between the 2 ways of thinking. And it's really, really helpful to understand our own locus of control, because if we believe everything is in our control, we may experience stress when something unexpected happens, and therefore might want to look at becoming more flexible in our thinking. But equally, if we believe nothing is in our control, we may experience lots of small day-to-day stress that's unnecessary. So we might want to look at broadening the picture and focusing on things that we can control. So we really want people to be somewhere on that spectrum, but either side of them can cause stressors, as I'm sure you can imagine. So you might recognize some of this in yourself. You might think, yes, I know everything is in my control, and that's wonderful because my destiny is in my own hands. I can control my well-being, I can control my stress. But then the problem with that is if something unexpected happens or something out with your control, it can be a bit of a struggle to almost let that go and say, okay, that's happened, it was unexpected, I can't control it, so move on. But equally, if you're constantly just very fluid and believing everything is up to fate, you might actually lose motivation, or you might get lots of stress that is very, very unnecessary because you're not taking the right action and the right ownership of things. So let's have a little think about this ourselves. So take a second to think back to the last time you were stressed. It might have been a cancelled flight, or you had to travel with a cold, or arrive in a city where you felt unsafe. So bring this situation back to your mind, but don't allow it to cause you stress or upset you. And try thinking about this and try writing it down if you can. So what thoughts were going through your mind? Did you feel as if you could do something about it? So here are 6 statements, and these are Diana's responses. So as can be seen, she tends to believe things are out with her control. That's an external locus of control. And then the way to improve that is to start focusing on what she can control and putting in mechanisms around that so they don't cause stress. For example, if Diana can start to understand and recognize that actually her hard work will help her achieve her ambitions, she'll be more motivated. And then these issues that she's having at work will probably disappear slightly. So just have a bit of a think about those questions. What thoughts were going through your mind when you were last stressed? Did you feel there was something you could do about it? And take a moment as well to look at these responses and think, where would you have marked yourself? So, for example, my future is predetermined and up to fate. Where would you put yourself on that? We'll come back to this later, but depending if you're at either end of the extreme, it could be something worth looking at. So this is the 3rd step in creating your own stress management plan. This is around identifying your warning signs. I hope that's making sense to everybody and you're finding it useful so far. I've put this big danger sign here because it's really, really important to be able to identify your warning signs. So do you exhibit any of these? Do you talk fast? Do you complain? Do you overreact to things? Can you get irritable? Do you procrastinate? Do you walk around miserable and forget to laugh? When I think about myself and when I get stressed, I'd probably definitely forget to laugh. What else would I do? I'll probably start walking very fast as well, and maybe procrastinate by going to the fridge and clearing it out. So we all have our ways of dealing with pressure and dealing with stress. These are some typical warning signs that people experience. And being able to identify your own warning signs is a really good level of self-awareness. And it's essential for our health and well-being, because if we can continually recognize what our own individual warning signs are, then we can get to the point where it becomes very automatic, and you can say, I must be stressed because I'm exhibiting this type of behavior, or I'm doing this. So that's me, that's my body telling me and my mind telling me I'm stressed, and I need to take a look at that. Perhaps I need to focus on something else, or distract myself, or even just give myself a good talking to. So if you are aware of these types of things and what you tick, then you can combat all these sorts of challenges. Another thing to think about here is, do you exhibit stress easily, and does that affect other people? So the reason that I ask that is because it's a massive danger sign if you are, because you might be what we call a stress carrier, and nobody wants to be a stress carrier. A stress carrier is somebody who will make other people feel stressed just simply by being in their presence, whether they're stressed or not. They just sort of seem to manifest that. And whilst that is obviously their way of dealing with things, if that's what we're doing, it's really important to maybe try and rein that in with a bit of awareness, because over time it can erode relationships, and nobody wants to be known as the stress carrier. We can all picture who those people are, but we definitely don't want to be that person ourselves. So this is the third step to identifying your warning signs. These are actually some of Diana's warning signs in each of the 4 categories. So she, for example, was feeling particularly stressed in advance of her trip to New York. And with her external locus of control, she was struggling to see what she could do to help the situation. When developing her plan, she focused on challenging internal beliefs that success was up to fate and she had no control over the outcome. And she learned to identify and improve her warning signs, many of which are listed here. So you can see she's had, in terms of her thinking, she's got very demanding thinking on herself and other people. Everything has to be perfect. Everything has to happen now. Everything has to happen in the right way. She can also engage in a little bit of phoneism. So this is what we would call that term, this type of thinking, where she goes into a situation and thinks, oh my goodness, they're going to realize how terrible I am at my job. I shouldn't be here. I'm going to be found out. Or blame. So if something doesn't go to plan, she'll attribute that to somebody else. It's my boss's fault. She shouldn't have sent me. And then you'll see as well, some of the other symptoms that she was feeling in her body were around struggling to sleep, but waking a lot, not getting exercise, not prioritizing that exercise time, not getting her diet wasn't quite as it should be. So eating lots of sugary food and drinking more coffee and alcohol. So these are all sort of, I guess, physical symptoms, as well as having a heart racing and being unable to switch off. So the body and the mind obviously relate well together, and they have a very sort of integrative process. They can affect each other, and then together they can really affect the bottom 2 boxes, how somebody behaves and how somebody lives and works. So in any stress management plan, it's always advisable to focus on those top 2, the healthy body and the happy mind, as a starting point. So I would like you now to take a moment to identify the last time that you were stressed. I know we did that previously, so you can use that particular time, or you can find a new one. So make a mental note of it, or you can write it down. And again, just think about the thoughts that were going through your mind. Were you exhibiting any of these types of things here? I can't cope with this. This shouldn't be the way it is. I'm going to be found out. I ought to have done that. Or equally, how did you feel in your body? Were there any sensations going on? Was there any sweating or stomach upsets? Or did you feel exhausted? No energy? Were you consuming lots of caffeine even though you didn't need it? And how did you behave? Were you talking very fast, walking very fast, eating very fast? Did you have an air of being a little bit frantic and a bit tense and abrupt with people? So thinking about that, what can you actually do about it? And just these are some interesting questions to ask yourself to try and increase your levels of self-awareness around your own stress. And that self-awareness will help you identify precisely where to prioritize and where to focus on first. So here are 5 questions that you might find particularly useful to ask yourself if you notice your warning signs. So these are 5 questions you can ask yourself in the moment. If you notice you're starting to walk fast, or you're procrastinating by overeating, or you're having some negative thinking or feeling a bit anxious, just stop and ask, okay, is this stress or is it pressure? Is my ego being put on the line? What I mean by that is how our egos, in terms of how people might view us or think of us, or our sense of self. A lot of stress emerges and can become a problem when our ego is put on the line. So that's when we feel as if we're potentially going to be judged. Think as well, is it accurate? Am I making assumptions? Am I reading people's minds? What's the evidence for this? And also ask yourself, who cares, really? How important is this outcome? What does it actually matter in the grand scheme of things? Okay, so I might be 10 minutes late on this deadline, or I might be 10 minutes late for this meeting because the flight's been cancelled. Really, is it the end of the world? I'm quite sure that you all have the skills and ability to smooth things over. And quite often these things can actually just end up being funny. And also say to yourself, lastly, okay, this is very action orientated. What can I do to cope with this? What one thing can I do? So there are 5 questions psychologically that are very good to ask yourself when you notice any of those warning signs. So I hope now that you've written down some of your key warning signs, and then you can ask yourself and question those warning signs against these 5 here. In terms of stress, and you have to excuse me, I've gone ahead an extra one. There we go, stress. How do we tackle it? So now we have a really good idea on what is potentially causing us stress, our warning signs, and how to identify it. You can see here there are quite a few examples of different ways you can tackle stress. As I mentioned before, it's most beneficial to start with the top 2, body and mind, as improving how we think and feel creates a good starting point for the other areas. Simply changing a thought can change our entire day. And equally, simply changing our posture can change a thought. So I have a trick here that I'll share with all of you that I use and I find to be particularly fantastic. If you're feeling stressed or anxious, just simply roll your shoulders back and tilt your chin up slightly. You'll find that it instantly lifts and opens the chest, makes your voice clearer. You'll find it's easier to breathe, and it'll give you a bit of distraction from your thoughts. So just try that simple posture change next time you're feeling stressed, and hopefully you'll notice a bit of a difference. There's quite a lot of stuff here around how to tackle stress, and one of the key things is retraining the brain. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with the term neuroplasticity. Our brains are essentially like the muscles in our body, so we can train them. So yes, we're all born with a particular gene set, and then through nurture we sort of emerge with particular ways of thinking. But just like any other muscle in the body, our brains can be trained, they can be developed. Certain parts of the brain can be developed more than others, and new connections can form. So it is actually very possible, and science has proven this, to train your brain to be happier and to be more positive. It doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. Other things that are really important are using good imagery techniques, okay, and remembering as well that taking control of your mind is actually a choice. So here is a list of potential things that you can do to improve each area of your well-being. And like I said before, if you want to know more about these, just send me an email and I can send you some more information and specific strategies that you can start to implement if any of these really jump out at you. So this is about highlighting awareness to you of the potential solutions there for managing your stress. Ten immediate ways to reduce your stress. These can also be really helpful for aiding your sleep, relaxing on a journey, or distracting you if you find you're reaching for some unhealthy food. I won't go through each of these independently, but what I will do is take you through some of them. So we'll jump to number 5, which we call FOFBOC. So that stands for, and FOFBOC is a really easy way to remember it. That stands for feet on floor. So that's, if everyone can try this now, put both feet flat on the floor. Put your bottoms into your chairs and sit tall. That's where FOFBOC comes from. Feet on floor, bottoms on chairs. So sit tall. If you can, close your eyes again, and I'll breathe on my count in through the nose and out through the mouth, okay? So sit tall, eyes closed, and in through the nose for 1, 2, 3. Hold it. And out for 1, 2, 3. We can try that again. In for 1, 2, 3. Hold it. And out for 1, 2, 3. So it's most beneficial to do that 3 times, although we only did it twice there. But I hope that you can all feel that just adopting that simple posture and breathing in deeply through the nose slowly, holding it, and breathing out slowly through the mouth a few times can just really, really settle the body and mind. That sort of technique is really fabulous for resetting our systems, I suppose you might say, and just helping us take stock and sense check. The other technique or tip for reducing your stress is to practice gratitude. So gratitude is probably one of the most powerful things in terms of training the brain to be happier and be more positive. It's so simple, but all you do is you write down 3 things you're grateful for. Try it now. Just on a bit of paper, jot down 3 things that come to your mind. This can be anything. So for me, right now in this moment, the 3 things are my health, being here to talk to all of you today, which I'm very grateful for. And also the third thing is having a career that I love, even though it's got its challenges. I love it. So those are 3 things, but I do this most mornings, but some mornings they can be as simple as I love the Californian redwood tree outside my window and waking up seeing that every morning. So it can be small or large, but just practicing that every day can start that neuroplasticity brain training process. And then jumping now to number 10, this is another really fantastic thing, and I use this as well, but it's great, is picking theme words. So you can pick 2 theme words at the start of the year to carry you through the year, or you can pick a couple of theme words that might help you with a particular situation or an event or a person that you're maybe anxious about, stressed about, or just don't feel 100% about. Imagine and picture this situation at its best. So it's fantastic. Or a person, you've got the best relationship ever, you're rolling around on the floor laughing together. Or for example, if it's a presentation, the presentation, you've just nailed it and you get a round of applause. If you take a second to imagine that, what 2 words would you use to describe that at its very best? Again, write these theme words down and take them with you. My 2 words are, at the moment, they can change sometimes. At the moment, my 2 words, when I'm feeling a little bit apprehensive about something, are easy and fun. So whenever I think of something coming up, I tell myself, I write down and I tell other people, this is going to be really easy and it's going to be super fun. And then I go on to talk about how excited I am about it, how I'm looking forward to it. And then it can really, you start to feel that emotion running through your body just from using the words and the language. So it keeps things playful and removes the stress and can really just change things to be very, very positive. So equally, if, for example, you have run into a situation where you're so tired from traveling all the time and you're jet lagged, but you have so much work to do, but you also haven't seen your loved ones for a while, so you want to give them some attention, and it's all just getting on top of you. But actually, that's probably because you're so tired and feeling a little bit overloaded. Pick 2 words to help manage that. Could simply be good, as in everything's good, everything's great. And another one that I use is get to. So well, that's more of a phrase than a word, but get is the word. So a situation like that, I would say, I get to do this, not I have to do this. And just using that subtle change can help you cope with things a bit better. So I hope that's helped, and you can try writing down your theme words and lists of gratitude. We're now coming on to the 4th step in the well-being action plan. So this is where you can take everything and put that into practice. I've put here Diana's starter well-being plan, and it's a very, very simplified version, but it can give you a template to work with, which I guess is a self-help stress management plan, essentially. So you can see here that her goal was to achieve a much more balanced locus of control. So it was more beneficial for her to believe that she was in control of her success and failure. A key action, therefore, was to spend 30 minutes reflecting upon the 3 questions. These are the 3 questions listed at the top that I outlined earlier for you to just get a bit of a sense of your own well-being. And I've listed here the 5 steps that Diana worked through. So she then mapped out her unhelpful thoughts, and that really just revolved around taking herself to a stressful situation and literally just writing down what unhelpful thinking she had. And then against each of those thoughts, writing down what the potential consequences of that was. Then next to each of those, a more helpful way of thinking or believing. So this map and seeing this on paper helped her see in black and white how her own thinking was really, really affecting her stress. At the same time, it was her own personal solution for changing that thinking so it's much more beneficial and much more helpful. Another thing that she was focused on doing, which you might feel very useful, was at least once a day practicing this new helpful ways of thinking and writing down any stress triggers or any stress warning signs that she was noticing, and then coming up with solutions to try and change that. So to apply this to yourself, I would love you to leave here today with one clear intention for managing your own stress. So write down one goal and one action that you will take and when you're going to start. And my recommendation, of course, would be to start today, because why wait? So just write down one goal to improve your own stress levels and your own well-being, and one action that you can take. Some examples to help you. You could reflect and record your thinking and your beliefs around a flight that was cancelled, and list the actions that you might have taken for a more positive response that was less stressful. You could speak to a colleague who handles situations well and ask them what they do. Or you could also practice some of the breathing exercises that we've worked through today, and practice some of those top 10 tips that were in a few slides previous. I hope you've all managed to write down that goal. Erica, if you could please release the poll for us now.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay, that should be launched on the screen for everybody.
Great, so take a moment to think about how supported you feel by your organisation to improve your well-being. Okay, extremely might be lots of support truly embedded in our culture. Very could be taken seriously, yet programs of support could be improved. A little might be there is an interest, yet not quite the right support in place. Lip service, it's spoken about, yet it's not part of the culture, and nothing. They don't appear to have any interest in my well-being.
Okay, so I'm going to close that poll for you now.
Thank you.
I'm going to show it on the screen.
Okay, so well, I'm pleased to see, first of all, very pleased to see that nobody has put nothing, which would refer to have no interest in well-being. That's good to see. So most of you have put very or a little. So that would suggest that there is an interest there, which we would expect because they have a legal responsibility and duty of care, yet they probably need guidance around the type of support you need and the programs that you need and what mechanisms that you need in place. So this could be a case of they maybe offer generic well-being support, but because you're a business traveller, it doesn't target what you need and how you live and how your work operates. So it might be a case, therefore, of speaking to your employer and saying, because I going back to earlier, but 67% of you, 2/3 of you, didn't really raise these concerns with your employer. So it might be a case of speaking to them and saying that actually for your own well-being, you need slightly different approaches, and this is what they are. So taking a bit of ownership then, and helping your employer help you to develop a bit of a better culture and a bit of a better support mechanism in place. Have I got controls now back, Erica?
Yep, you should have.
Wonderful.
Might just take a second to catch up with itself.
Perfect. There we go. So in terms of enhancing the success of your own well-being, like I mentioned, speaking to your organization and help them help you, so take control of the situation. So I always view stress management as being very balanced, and well-being as being very balanced, as you would expect, considering my profession. So that's about having balance in ourselves, but it's also balancing some of the ownership and responsibility. So we as people have to take control over our own well-being and our own stress management. It's our minds, it's our bodies, it's our lives. So, you know, we're all educated, we're all professionals. We do this in every other element of our lives. So we should really be doing this for our own well-being and recognizing this is where my well-being is at the moment. This is where I want it to be. Figuring out what do I need to do to get there, and then making the right changes. But equally, there is a responsibility on the employer and on your organization to give you the right platform to do that. So that's about them understanding, like I said before, what do you need? So if we think back to those key things that the research shows around intensity of travel, so frequency, duration, and quality, and if we think back to how somebody thinks and how somebody behaves, are they getting the right recovery? Do they need some help in becoming more psychologically flexible? So if the organization recognizes that as business travelers, you have slightly different needs and priorities to manage your well-being to the norm and to people back in the office, then that can really help things. So thank you, everybody. I think next steps is really to go away and reflect upon all of this. There's been quite a lot to take in. Definitely get in touch with me. Just send me an email or a text or a WhatsApp message if you would like to have a chat about what you've learned today, or talk about any of the techniques, or something you'd just like to know a bit more about things, or have any questions answered. So I hope really walking away from today, you've got a good understanding of stress. You can also recognize some of your own warning signs and triggers and causes, and they have some tips that you can apply to help you in the moment and longer term. Here are my contact details if anybody does want to get in touch. I think it's possibly worth noting as well here that I'm giving away some free coaching to people, so please get in touch if you would like to take advantage of that. So thank you very much, everybody.
Fantastic, thank you so much, Lucy. I'm just going to go back actually to your slide there, just to keep your details on the screen for everybody. Lucy, just talking about what you're grateful for, can I just say that I am, as I'm sure everybody else is here on this webinar, that you've helped and educated. So I'm personally very grateful to you to help us deal with travel-related stress, so a huge thank you.
Oh, thank you, Erica. That's very sweet of you. Thank you so much. Oh, you're so lovely. You're so lovely. Wonderful.
And there's some good practical tips to take away, particularly the breathing techniques. And, you know, you can do that personally when you're on your own, or, you know, even if you're in the airport and you're feeling stressed. And one of my favorite sayings is about, you know, control the controllables. So thinking about, you know, if it's out of your control, is it really worth getting as worked up about? And there might be consequences, but think about what you can control out of those. So for example, if your flight's delayed, you can email or call ahead to where you're going. So it's just reducing, you know, it's out of the flight being delayed is out of your control, but looking at what you can control to mitigate any kind of fallout from anything that might be there. So yeah, definitely lots to think about. We've had a question come in, and again, if anybody else wants to put a question forward, please do so through the question panel. Somebody has written here, how do I relieve my stress when standing in an airport security queue, typically in the USA, for 2 hours? Is that even possible to relieve that stress when you're queuing? I mean, the UK, I think the UK is probably worse for queuing anyway. Everybody queues, whether it's in the bank or anywhere else. It's equally irritating, I guess. But do you have any tips for this, for relieving stress when standing in airport security?
Yeah, that's funny, because airport security has I did a bit of work actually around reducing stress of passengers going through the airport, and the security lines were actually the biggest stress point within an airport. So this I was working with an airport in Scotland around this to help them evaluate, is it actually the airport security, or is it an accumulation of the whole airport process that manifests and then comes out, the straw that put the camel's back in security? But 2 hours in a line, that is I think anybody would get quite stressed at that, and let's just hope that there weren't crying children around you for those 2 hours as well. So in terms of actually managing that type of situation, my biggest piece of advice would be recognizing that there isn't much you can do about the situation, unless of course you are going to something gets speedy boarding or something, or travel first class or whatever. But the reality is there probably isn't much you can do about it. So therefore, simply recognizing that can often bring a sense of calm. And you then saying, okay, well, I'm going to use this time for something else. So then using those 2 hours you could be catching up on emails on your phone as you're going through the line, and practicing some of these gratitude and breathing techniques. So if you recall the technique I talked you through earlier, right at the beginning, you can actually, with practice, do that with your eyes open. So that whole thing takes, I mean, that took us possibly 5 minutes today. I'm not sure, I didn't time it, but that could be 5 minutes, and do that every half hour. That positive visualization and deep breathing techniques. So I would say they're the most in the moment things you can do. Yeah, so those top 10 tips as well that I outlined, applying those, carry those with you in a bit of paper, but practicing those as you're going through the security line could work very well. So there are two things. One is recognizing that you can't control it, because therefore don't be frustrated about it. And then the other thing was practicing the sort of mind calming and breathing techniques to relax you.
Fantastic, thank you, Lucy. I think for me, I just find the whole thing boring when you're queuing up. So I tend to like download like an ebook or put some music on, just so I can zone out from everybody else around me and everything that they're doing. So just to sort of pass the time, really.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a bit of recognition there, and just try to focus on keeping a happy mind, and removing the frustrations, using the time wisely, and staying calm.
Superb, thank you. Right, I'm going to move on now. I'm just conscious of time because we've gone over slightly. We've still got most people on, so hopefully everybody's got Lucy's email address there. I will be sending a follow-up email, so don't worry for everybody else. Lucy also mentioned that she's very kindly extending some free coaching, so there'll be more details about that as well in the follow-up email that I'm going to send. And as Lucy very kindly said, she's happy to answer any questions. There's actually been a huge amount that you've gone through, Lucy, in this little time, really, and it's such a huge subject. So I'm sure everybody's going to be going away and reflecting and just taking that time to really think about what it is that you've said. There will be a copy of this webinar, recording of it, so you will also receive a link to download that as well, should you wish to go back through it. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, this is the third webinar in our Your Best Travel Self series. Our next webinar is on the 5th of December on beating jet lag, so also another great one to be involved in. And as I also mentioned, we're looking into subjects to really deliver in 2019. So 1 hour sound bites of things that really you'll find helpful. So again, I'd really be grateful if you could reply in our survey and include information in there of what you would want going forward. So Lucy, again, thank you very much to you. Thank you very much to our sponsors, EasyJet, as well. And thank you to each of you as well for giving yourself this precious time to help yourselves move forward and hopefully become a little less stressed, if not completely stress-free, if that's at all possible. But of course, that will lead to you being more effective in the workplace and of course in your personal lives as well. If you are a female and you're not already a member, you can sign up to our website as well, maiden-voyage.com. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and all the other social media channels. And again, I'll be putting these in the follow-up email for you. So without further ado, thank you so much for your time. Thank you again, Lucy, and I wish you all a wonderful rest of the day and rest of the week, and safe travels to you all. Goodbye.